So today on the podcast, I have Kaia with me, who I've been really excited and really looking forward to chatting about her experience with RED-S and low energy availability. So welcome, Kaia. Great to meet you finally.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's nice meeting you as well.
I know we realized that we sort of like missed each other in Girona a couple of weeks back, but it's finally
Yeah.
good to cross paths. But I came across your story from an interview that you did for an article about RED-S a while back, and I wondered if you would be interested to sort of share your experience about RED-S and low energy availability. For anyone that doesn't know what RED-S is, it stands for relative energy deficiency in sport. And so but yeah, do you want to share your story with RED-S?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, it's a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, going through it or having gone through REDS. So yeah, it's definitely something that I want to continue spreading awareness in the Peloton, and
Mm.
especially the women's Peloton because yeah, it's definitely something that I think uh is not is not strange to the community. A lot of people struggle with it for sure.
Like missing periods, like I've heard riders talk about coaches like, oh, that's just normal, that's just part of the sport. What was it that sort of made you realize that it was an issue for you as well?
Yeah, so I think in years past, like, there's been this notion that, like, eating less is better and, like, missing periods means you're, like, really strong and, like, that means you're, like, perfect weight and prime to go, or, like, fasting and not eating breakfast and going for a ride is, like, the way to, burn off body fat and become a better and leaner and faster rider. Um, and going into, like, all of this, I think I was around 17 years old, so I just kind of thought I knew what was best and didn't know about REDs or that you could lose your period or anything like that. And so I kind of just heard all these previous notions of like, yeah, fasting is good and like all that kind of stuff. And so back in, yeah, 2020 now, I always like grew up as like a sprinter and like I would like win all the crits in the US and I would do really well on, the elite level in the US. And I was really determined to I feel like I was pigeonholed as, like, just a sprinter, and
Mm.
I was really determined to change my abilities a little bit and transform into a bit more of a climber, and
Yeah.
at that time, I, like, ate anything I wanted. I would eat Oreos for any time of the day. I would, you know, just eat cookie dough from, like, the kind that you get at the store, and I just whatever,
Yeah.
pizza, bread, like, I didn't know what a vegetable is, I didn't know what a fruit was, like, I was not about any of that. I was not about eating
Yeah.
healthy. I just kinda ate I was a kid, I was
Yeah.
17. Um, and so I was like, "Oh, like, I really wanna get lean, I wanna get faster this year, I wanna prove to people that I'm not just a sprinter." And so that's kind of where my journey started to, like, try to lean out a bit, and that was also going into my last year as, like, a junior of, like, Road Worlds back in 2021. So, yeah, back in 2020 is kinda when it started, and, yeah, I would just do things that obviously, weren't healthy, not eat before a ride, not eat after a ride, and at first it was fine because it takes a while for your body to, go red and start to
Yeah.
worry that something's wrong. But yeah, eventually I think I started like being cautious of my food in like July of 2020 and then in like March 2021 my period like completely disappeared. And that's
Mm.
also when I started to ramp up the training again cuz we were coming out of COVID and it was going to be a real season and races were coming and yeah, that whole season I went without a period. Um, and it was after Junior Road Worlds where I recognized that something something wasn't right and
Yeah.
I acknowledged that I had gotten a little bit too obsessed with food and a little bit too obsessed about being as lean as I could be.
Yeah.
It's kind of like all that consumed my mind. And so then last year, I I kind of, dealt with it a little bit on and off as well, just coming off of it and like, your body once you start eating again, my body gained a decent amount of weight fast and my period was kind of erratic and like it would like I swear
Mm.
it came like 5 times in like 3 months at one point. And so like
Yeah.
I was a little bit still all over the place. And then I would say, then coming back into this year and like going to Tour Down Under, it's been really consistent, and I feel like I've finally like gotten, and when I did drop the article with Human Powered Health, I was like, I finally feel like I've gotten a grip on it, and I understand my body better, and I understand how it works, and I understand what I need to do to perform well, and
Mm.
still be a strong, healthy athlete. So yeah, that's kind of the background of what like switched my mind, being like, oh, I wanna yeah, get leaner and get faster, and kind of how I went into Red S. And nobody really told me about it at first. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't
Yeah.
know that it was losing your period was even a problem. It was a thing that happened to women. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I rolled up to a junior camp um in Southern California when I was still on Lux, and I was having just I was getting sick a lot, and the team asked if I had my period, and I said no, and that's when they raised a red flag and said that that should be something that you should address.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, I mean a very common sort of story, and what's interesting was the fact that you mentioned that the first initially, like maybe you're losing weight, your training's going up, like your food intake is going down, and it's something that I see a lot with both girls and guys, where it's like maybe the first year you kind of like getting away with it, but like performances can be still going really well, but then as you mentioned, like you kind of then hit like a wall, and you kind of then can go off that cliff of getting sick every second week. And one of those symptoms that of being in reds is getting sick all the time, and lots of recovery and being ill and having to take more time off the training, which is the thing that you're most passionate about, and you want to be getting stronger for your races.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things too is that like I had a dream kind of season when I did get really, really
Yeah.
skinny, and it happened to be my last year of juniors. And so, I was the oldest, one of the older girls in the field. I was the second year. And yeah, everything kind of just fell into place that season in terms of on the bike. And so it's sometimes hard to disassociate with that with being like super lean. And I associate with it like, oh, I got junior world titles. I got all these medals that year. I, won my first elite road race back in Ireland and Europe. And it's like, it's hard to disassociate that with with being lean and being like, oh, that was because I was, so that was because I was lean, super lean.
Yeah,
I
but
even hear girls,
unsustainably so.
yeah, and I really even hear girls in the peloton, who aren't, I've heard people who aren't at like, winning races, winning world tour races, and I've heard girls ask that are younger than me, being like, "Oh, is that like what you need to do to be the best? Like, do you just need to
Mm,
be too skinny? Do you need to be, anorexic?" Like,
yeah. Yeah,
so
or actually, like it's as you said, like initially the results might be like good initially, but it's not sustainable, and your body starts to get weaker. And this week there's been the update of the Reds position statement, and so in terms of the impact it has on health and on performance, so I'm going to do a full podcast episode on that next week. But it's like it's so many different things and factors that it impacts for both guys and for girls, and that mental side of things you're talking about like the obsession about food and the stress and the avoidance, the impact that can have on your social life and your just ability to live normally if you're trying to be so controlling with what and when you eat.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It really does affect everything. Yeah, especially in women. I mean, like my sleep, yeah, that
Yeah.
was not good because I would wake up hungry at 6 a.m. and I couldn't fall back asleep, or 5
Mm,
a.m. or 4 a.m., just in the middle of the night when it was still so early, or I would get sick all the time because my immune system was down. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that started to fail me, which made me address the root cause of the problem, which was eating.
yeah. Because did you have like a good support network of like with obviously your team broached it and said this is something we need to address? Did you have people around you that were really encouraging and helped you through? Because as you said, like if if you do start gaining weight and or your weight is a bit erratic after that, it can be stressful mentally for a lot of people. Like how was that environment?
Yeah, for sure. No, it was really cool to see the team that rallied around me once I recognized everything and I admitted that, like, I was struggling with eating.
Yeah.
Um, and at the time, I was still on Lux, which was my junior development team, and it was November of 2021 when I recognized that this is something that I need to work with, but I wasn't fully committed. And so at the time I worked with, we had a sponsor, Scratch Labs, and I worked with
Mm,
their nutritionist a little bit. And then when I joined Human Powered Health that January, my agent was the one who was like, you need a nutritionist and like you need to just work with somebody for a while that's steady and gives you
mm,
a full meal plan so that you really don't have to think that they just kind of do the work for you. They know your ride and they give you your meal
yeah.
plan. And that's when I worked with a nutritionist that Judith that I brought on. Um,
Mm,
and she, yeah, helped me get my period back within like, I think it took, like, 2 months, and
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
still biking, I didn't have to stop training, which was super cool that
Yeah.
I was still able to gain it back, um, yeah, while working with her, and then it was a little erratic after that, and,
Yeah.
when I came down with mono that summer, that's when I really addressed it and just, yeah, was on board with getting it back completely and not, 1 month off, 1 month on kinda thing.
Yeah, well, that's and the journey that it can take can be for like it can be a couple of weeks and it can be a couple of months depending on the severity and how many changes that you're willing and able to make. And certainly what I've seen with the women that I've worked with who haven't had a period for sometimes like 7+ years, and it's a lot of time there's a lot of food fear, kind of like what you talked about, particularly around with gaining weight. And also, if sport is your job, then you don't really want to have to stop your job and something that you love. So like, and what I've found, I don't know about for you, but the thing I've seen in practice is the really like non-negotiable thing if you're going to maintain your training is that fueling in the training. And that's sort of been this is non-negotiable, even if it's only half an hour, only an hour, and it's only easy. As women, we're so much more sensitive to the stress and the negative impact that can create.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was really lucky that I was able to get it back while still riding.
Mhm.
And I think it just depends on somebody's body and some people can't. But I think that the notion of like women already are stressed about weight, and then you put
Mm.
us into a sport that where weight matters. Um, and
Yeah.
then and then that's where people start to spiral, and I think that's why a lot of people struggle within
Yeah.
cycling.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd like to sort of encourage, because it's obviously cycling is it's a weight sensitive sport. It's not a case of that you must make a certain weight in order to be able to perform, but you want to be at a body composition that's suitable for you, and that is going to be very unique for each sort of person. But what I like to sort of remind people is like the lightest isn't always the strongest, and especially not in the long term, and it's not always so sustainable, especially if there's so much stress and focus and restriction having to go into getting that position. So we want to try and like find that position, that space where you can be stable and but also enjoy life and be able to have the Oreos or the pizza here and there. Obviously it's not the only thing that you eat, but it's like that you can have those extras like fitting into your lifestyle, which makes any sort of diet plan much more sustainable and realistic to apply to and stick with long term.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that one of the biggest things too is just like comparing yourself to others, and that's why people start to get into this mindset of,
Yeah,
starving themselves or whatever it is. Um And and like you said, everybody is unique, everybody is different, everybody performs best at a different weight, and so you just
yeah.
can't compare yourself to anybody because every single body is unique.
Yeah, and then for on top of that, then there's so much body dysmorphia as well, where people like perceive like comparison to other athletes or other sports of what you think you should look like, or someone else is looking like, and so yeah, having like people around you that are like encouraging and positive and can give you those reality checks of like this isn't normal, like actually you're like something's not right, I think
Yeah.
is great. And it was good to hear that you did have that support system around you then as well. So they didn't,
Yeah.
so it was a couple of like a short period of time being in reds and not like years and years and years on end.
Yeah, like, I'm lucky that I only really w my period was only absent for, like, 1 full year, and then it was a little bit spotty after, but, yeah, for
Mm,
sure, I wish that I think that is still something that could be avoided, though, because I think if I had known from the very beginning and I was educated, you know,
mm,
before I before anybody raised red flags for me, I think that's
yeah,
something that more women could avoid, and I think, people are starting to speak up about it, and juniors are starting to learn about it, but I think it's something that women should be exposed to and learn about really young so that they
yeah,
can avoid it in the future. Because I think if I was exposed to it and knew about it before somebody, yeah, raised that red flag for me when I was already, 7 months without a period, I think
yeah,
that would yeah, that would have helped me, and I maybe wouldn't have gotten into that spiral from the very beginning and then had to, you know, to train my mind to not think that way and, like, reverse all the
mm,
damage that I'd already done. Um, and one of the big things I ended up reading too when somebody raised that red flag that year was Roar by Stacey
mm,
Stims, which was I call it my Bible now. Like it's a really good book just to understand and learn about reds, and I think it's like if
mm,
we could use that book and kind of like teach girls like the content that's in that book
yeah,
while they're still young and before they even start to think about, how lean should I be or whatever. It could be
yeah.
something that could be really, really helpful for the women's peloton.
Absolutely. And that's where that whole like fueling for performance rather than that eating and cheating sort of mentality. Like that's certainly the mission that I'm on, is to transform that sort of mindset and culture, because I see it so heavily prevalent that people feel like they have to be depriving and restricting and eating less and less. It was like, actually, no, we want to flip the script. Like it's like, what's the maximum? Like how, like we want to be able to like maximize how much you're able to eat and to feel so that you get the best training quality and recovery and performance. And so like what, like if you could like rewind the script, like what do you think would have been the most useful thing to like to have like motivated you to change back then?
To get healthy again.
Yeah, or like if when we to have like started fueling your training and avoiding the restriction.
I think the biggest thing is I just knew that it wasn't sustainable.
Mm,
And like for my like physical and mental health, I was
mm,
just drained. I had no energy.
mm,
I think I just got to a point where I was like getting sick all the time. I wasn't feeling well. I wasn't sleeping well. And that was the thing where that's where I was like, I like anything different. I don't care what it is,
yeah.
but I can't like go on like this.
You have any final words of wisdom for anyone that, yeah, that thinks that they may be suffering or like maybe in a state of reds that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely reach out. I think there is a really big support system in the cycling community now as people are recognizing that this is an issue. And so
Mm,
yeah, reach out. Don't compare yourself to others. Everyone develops at different rates and is on a different trajectory and looks different. Everybody is super unique. So yeah, don't compare yourself to others. Focus on you and yeah, reach out to the support system around you because I'm sure people wanna help.
yeah, no, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. So, no, thank you so much for sharing your story. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope anyone that's listening that wants to know more, reach out to Kaia and or myself. And yeah, let's start getting more people fueling their training and for peak performance rather than getting stuck in that eating is cheating mentality. Thanks so much for coming.